This area, we actually got that grant from Xerxes, and we solarized it with a brand new piece of clear greenhouse plastic. And we had a trencher on the place at the time, so we actually trenched the perimeter, buried the plastic in there, and it did a wonderful job. And that was there for, I think, almost 9 months before we did the first transplants into it. Put down cardboard and wood chips and planted in holes cut in the cardboard. And it did reasonably well. There's been some hand weeding that's gone on in there, but not that much. And Jim is really into fruit and berries, so he put in blackberries and raspberries here. He also put in this strawberry patch, which was very successful this year.
How many years does the fabric last?
I think it lasts a good 5 years or more. We have kept the same type of fabric on the floor of our propagation house. I think we've replaced it 3 times in 20 years.
You've seen a decrease in the noxious pests?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any particular that have really just
Oh, we used to not be able to grow cucumbers out in the open field. And we had so many cucumber beetles. At one point we were trying yellow sticky traps, and we were trapping more beneficial insects on the yellow sticky traps.
Yeah.
And so we cut loose of that. But it's the reason we can say we're no spray. Jim put these in, and I said, Jim, don't take our valuable prime soil to put your damn fruit trees in. But they are a wonderful addition to the farm. This is more of that diversity. These roots go deep down, start to pull up minerals that then get dropped in the leaves.
And he's growing stuff in between.
And we have some spicy mixes in there, and we had...
and that's been working out well?
It works out well in the heat of the summer when you're looking for a little shade. No, that has not been tilled. That probably had a piece of that occultation strip left down over last winter, or maybe put down early in the spring, and then planted into the bare soil under that.
Did you mow all the leaves into the ground or get them out?
We bring leaves onto the farm. We love leaves. So if they get mowed, it's fine. If they sit, it's fine. This is this year's garlic crop in here, and we had our main season tomatoes in here that were mulched with straw. The straw keeps a lot of the soil splash off the tomatoes. Nice disease control early in the year. And then we put the shredded leaves from the previous year down as path mulch. And Jim's put in a nice vineyard here. He's got wine grapes and eating grapes. So here's a little companion planting that I hadn't seen before. This is parsley underneath kale. So that was the spring kale crop. And we almost lost that to weeds. But the crew went in and got it in about a half an hour, did a really nice job, and the parsley was still growing strong. And they make a lovely, lovely home for these little parasitic wasps. I mean, when I was farming here, we had to stop growing broccoli, stop growing cauliflower. We never had any luck with the cabbage because of moths and the caterpillars that eat the plants. Now that we've got this really robust pollinator habitat, I think we're going to grow both of those crops again. We had a good crop of cabbage this year. This is the winter spinach that will overwinter here and be some of the first greens we can pick in the spring. It'll look like trash when March rolls around, and then in April we'll be out here rejoicing to have something fresh and ready to go in the box. This was last year's eggplant patch. Am I right? Yes. And we did do a little overseeding with clover, and you'll see some different success rates.
What do you mean by overseeding?
Well, basically we come down with a little hand, or broadcasting the seed around the plants, and in some places it's taken fairly well. These last 2 rows were the first ones that we took plants off of so we could get more sunshine in there. And they've come on pretty strong with a cover crop.
What kind of clover is that?
I believe it's white clover, but I'd have to check with Ellen to tell you the truth. I know that in some places we've put medium red and white clover out together. Well, the grass strips is what we used to do. And I used to come out and mow twice a week between all of my production beds. We were running that little Italian spader down and have a 3-foot strip of what I'd call chocolate cake. You could stick your arm in halfway up. Yeah, don't worry. Loose and soft. But after a few weeks of rains and some good New England weather, those beds would start to drop and drop and drop. And the paths that were being mowed with a mulching mower were raising up, and we were growing in sunken beds instead of raised beds the last couple of years. And I went and saw Elaine Ingham, I think, at a NOFA Mass conference, and it all just clicked for me. I really understood what she was talking about with the soil food web. My thought had been, if we have these grass paths, there's sanctuary for the earthworms, sanctuary for the mushrooms, all that good soil life. But if you go in and just mess up the soil where you want to plant, it takes a long time to recover.
Do you worry about the clover taking over?
Well, that's why we haven't done clover very much up until this year. And there are some people who have been very successful doing no-till growing with clover as a living mulch, if you will. And next year we'll tell the tale.
Are you going to give that a try?
Absolutely, yes.
The article that was in
In
the Recorder, was it last week?
Yeah, there was one in the Gazette that I saw.
He said so every 4 years or 5 years they have to get rid of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. Everybody's experience is going to be a little different. And I think the reason we've used the tiller is that persistent, I'm going to call it a myth, that you have to till the soil every so often. And I personally,
To get rid of weeds.
yeah, I personally don't believe that does very much good for anything. This bed here is a cover crop cocktail. This is oats, peas, and daikon radish. If you look around the edge, there may be a couple of daikons we'll be able to harvest for sale, which is nice.
They get big.
They do get big, and they'll push right up out of this ground.
Daikons.
Yeah, we use the seed that's cheaper called oilseed radish, but it's the exact same critter.
Great.
Yeah. So this is another one of the beetle banks right here, and we've had more weed intrusion along the edges. I actually screwed that up by trying to mow in there with the flail mower, and it'll probably recover. One man and a piece of equipment can do amazing damage. Well, one of the things we've tried to do is always keeping living roots in the ground. If we can do that, we've helped maintain that food web that really everything depends on. And when you look at trees growing out in the forest, I mean, nobody's out there putting out ammonia fertilizer or anything there. I sold the farm, and then Jim converted it to no-till. So I feel extremely lucky again to have been able to find someone not only willing to carry on with the certified organic, but take this next step into no-till. So this is a couple of silage tarps down here, and I would imagine this was a bad area for weeds. These will stay down all winter and probably be some of the first ground we uncover in the spring. You can tell just from looking at it. I mean, this stuff is dead, and everywhere these puddles are forming, that's water that could be feeding our soil life. But it's hard to fight against. It's hard to fight against weeds, and you can't grow anything with enough weeds. And I think this was part of the lettuce again down here that's probably mostly been flail mowed in and then just allowed to decompose on the bed tops. A flail mower, you know how your lawnmower, the blades go round and round this way horizontally? Well, a flail mower has a big drum, and it goes around horizontally like this, and all the chopped material falls down instead of blowing out to the side. And it's been a great machine. You can set it pretty high. We can go about 18 inches high, and we can actually do something we call scalping the soil, which isn't our preferred method, but that's actually taking that top ½ inch to 3/4 of an inch of topsoil, weeds, seeds, and all. So you can take a quick peek under this occultation strip and see, you know, that soil is still amazingly alive under there. And I think it's just because water and oxygen gets in. The black weave prevents sunlight from letting anything germinate or grow after it's germinated. And I'm fairly high on the occultation strips. This bed here was put in as a pollinator bed, and a lot of these plants came from the far side of that ragged evergreen patch down there. That's our property line, and the evergreens are doing a good job protecting us from any spray drift, but putting pollinator plants on the far side next to the tobacco field wasn't really helping the beneficials very much. They're getting attracted down there, and they get the spray drift. So we pulled everything up, put it in here. This may not stay more than the 3 years it's been here, but anytime we can leave a crop in the ground for more than 9 months, it's really, really good for the soil. So this is this year's garlic patch, and this was the patch that got spaded this year. And you can't see it, you really do have to look at the video, but when we ran the drop spreader down here, so it was just 1 or 2 trips with the tractor, the pathways just sunk and became slick. And you could really see how if we'd had a bad precipitation event, they would have filled up with water. And you really don't want standing water in your beds or in your paths, because that's promoting anaerobic activity in your soil as opposed to aerobic. A lot more disease. Organisms like soggy soil. So when I saw what this looked like, we managed to get a couple of volunteers out here with shovels and wood chips, and we filled the sunken pathways with wood chips. And I think we're going to be okay, particularly because the garlic's in the ground for that 9-month period. So we'll see earthworms back in there, and I think it's going to respond favorably. So this was all winter squash. This whole patch was edge to edge, stapled to the ground, occultation strips. Every other strip had holes burned in them, and we had a pretty good crop out of there, even after the spading. I mean, a funny thing happens when you first turn ground. You really are releasing a huge flush of nutrients because the bacteria go crazy, the fungus has to die and recede, and there's a lot of material in there to be converted directly into plant food. This was the same crop, but with straw as a mulch. I so much prefer an organic material for a mulch. The difference for me was 1 year growing garlic, I ran out of straw, and some of the beds were only 2/3 done, and the 1/3 that was out in the winter looked like desert. It was cracking and just hard, and you'd come back to where it was straw mulched and it was soft and just full of life. All right, so this was another bad weed area down here. Solarization down here, but the plastic wasn't held down tight enough. It became like a giant greenhouse for weeds. I mean, it was a solid mess. So this year we basically scalped the weeds with that flail mower, and this I think is the 3rd seeding of buckwheat to even get it to sprout in this dry year. If you're really bright-eyed, you can see the Canadian thistle that's in here. And the Canadian thistle is a sorry tale because It started in the asparagus patch. And one thing you really don't want is you don't want a perennial weed in a perennial crop. So this is a slightly different treatment of that same problem patch. This is annual ryegrass, which should get winter killed, with a clover mix. I think this has the white and the medium red clover in it. It's going to be very interesting to see how that comes through. Now we have still seen.
Right now.
It's gorgeous. I love a green cover.
So what's your neighbor growing?
Well, I'm so happy to see a cover crop. I believe it's oilseed radish mixed with winter rye. So that was introduced a couple of years ago, and I've seen a lot of it around the valley. I'm really quite thrilled because normally that is bare soil. Wow. Or stubs of tobacco or leftover corn stalks. All these willows here, there's a row of willows, everything from this corkscrew willow on the corner. And they were basically just started from pussy willows that I bought at the farmer's market. Left them in the vase for a while until the roots were showing, and then I threw them out here. So this was sweet potatoes this year. And potatoes, I mean, there's an interesting crop. How do you grow potatoes no-till? Well, you can do it in straw humps, if you will, and basically potatoes will grow in straw as it rots. It's actually a cool idea because it keeps the Colorado potato beetle from being interested in your potatoes. Even mulching them heavily works.
How do you manage some of the larger pests like the rabbits, and do you have deer?
We use an awful lot of row cover just for rodents. Not for the insect protection, but just to keep the rodents out.
This is sort of when you don't want to do a full tarp area, but you don't want to just till a bed, like you need to, you're like, okay, I want just one bed's worth of this stuff.
We use that quite a bit just for that purpose, yep. And really, in this location, the biggest issue is holding it down. And if you have enough staples, you can hold it down. We tend to use the T-posts quite a bit to hold down our tarps. And you can buy this in, 50-foot widths if you want. But we've pretty much settled on the 4-foot. Works with the current bed layout. So this is more example of, we've got hydrangeas over on that side of the field. We've got hydrangeas here. These guys would have bloomed quite a bit later than those because they get direct sunlight. And it helps establish that cross-field movement that we want to see from our pollinators and predators. Somewhere along here on this low border, we'll find a huge paper wasp nest. And paper wasps may have a bad reputation as a wasp, but they are voracious predators. They won't harm humans, they won't bite humans, and one of the things they need is a source of water and a source of soil. So a lot of times we're happy to have a leak by one of our irrigation hydrants. We'll put a little shallow pan underneath there with some sand on one side. Bees and all kinds of fun stuff can then take advantage and get a drink.
Go to the beach?
Go to the beach. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, there it is!
You got one here? Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And that's not a big one.
I love those.
Yeah, so here you can see some of the shrubs beginning to stand up on their own.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And if we had a whole row of them this big, we probably could get in there with the flail mower. Tall, weedy looking thing, I think that's ironweed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
It's so tall.
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's happy.
This is a beautiful farm. It's just really pleasant to be here because of
It's a little organic finger tickling all of these conventional fields in Hadley.